Everyone says find your passion. I'm not saying find your passion. There's a level of mastery that becomes uncomfortable. Once it doesn't feel good, it's no longer your passion, and it's easy to quit. So instead of looking for your passion, look for something you can commit to.
What does it take for someone to manifest their full potential?
If you want to do something extraordinary, you almost have to go like to the mountain top and train and transform the way you see yourself in the world. So your mindset changes. And when you transform mindset, you're literally building a whole new language for this accomplishment. You actually want to confront problems, breakdowns, disruption. In fact, if you're a CEO of a company and you're not intentionally creating problems, you should be fired or retrained immediately. Immediate. You don't belong there.
How does someone turn the chaos in their life into a breakthrough?
Chaos is not chaos. It's
Unlock the secrets to achieving breakthrough success in your business, career, and personal life using the psychology of human behavior. Join us as we sit down with a CEO advisor, author, and coach to explore the strategies and insights that drive transformative growth and high-impact leadership. Please welcome Ted Santos. Peace.
Thanks for inviting me, man. My pleasure, my honor to be here, man.
Yeah.
That's quite an introduction. Now I'm a little nervous. How am I going to live up to this guy this picture you just painted? So,
yeah. Well, your very being and everything that you've accomplished already live up to it, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us.
My pleasure. So,
yeah.
What are we talking about today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our show is centered around success.
Okay.
And with that being said, what would you say are the 3 fundamental things that a person needs to achieve success in their business and personal life?
You're just talking regular success? You just want to be good at it? Or you're talking about breakthrough success?
Both.
Okay. So regular success, master a craft, learn a craft. And sometimes you may be mastering it as you're pursuing it, creating the business. But find something that you're good at. You have some mastery, at least in a commitment to master that. I'm going to say something that probably goes against popular belief. Everyone says find your passion. I'm not saying find your passion. I'm saying find something to which you can commit and master it. Because passion feels good. And when it comes to mastering something, there's a level of mastery that becomes uncomfortable when you want to get to that tipping point. And once it doesn't feel good, it's no longer your passion, and it's easy to quit. So instead of looking for your passion, look for something you can commit to and master. And you'll go through that discomfort, and then you're able to present something to the world that people find valuable. I would also suggest that you understand finance, because a responsible business has profits. So you need to understand a balance sheet and income statements and your P&Ls, whether your business is doing well. Sometimes people have a business they love so much, but they're not making any money on it. You may not be charging enough. So
what's a P&L?
A profit and loss statement. So just as a quick side, years ago, there was a law firm doing $450 million in revenue. And one day employees came to work and there were padlocks because they were out of business. They filed bankruptcy. They were spending more than they were making. So imagine, you think, $450 million, we're doing fine. But they were not. So it's because sometimes you are providing a service, but you're not profitable with your service. And I've seen that, especially this is really important for small businesses. You're starting out. So you don't want to start out and dig a hole out the gate. So find something to which you're committed, develop mastery. You also need to understand finance. You don't have to be a master. But also, and the third thing is going to revolve around leadership, because ultimately you want to be able to produce results through another person. And producing results from another person may require you to hire people who are smarter than you. So as a leader, that becomes something that's critical to be able to manage and navigate people who are more talented than you, who can produce results better than you. But your job is not really like if you hire a CFO, someone or a controller to manage your finances, you understand finance, but you don't have the mastery they have. Your mastery is in something else. So that would be a good way to start if you want to be good at business.
I love that. That's a solid foundation. I want to explore the first one because I know you've been around some major figures and CEOs, and you're a former COO yourself.
Right.
But I think that the average person, right, just coming from the perspective of an average person that may not know what their purpose is or what they're good at, they're still in the discovery. You know, for example, I went out to dinner with some good friends of mine last night, as a matter of fact.
Sure.
And I celebrate the new year in the spring. But in the spirit of the new year 2025, we were discussing what are we going to manifest this year? What are we working on?
Sure.
And someone said, I don't know. I I don't know. I don't know what I'm here for. I don't know what I'm passionate about. And I know you mentioned about the passion thing. I don't know what my purpose is. So for someone who doesn't know, but they're in the inquiry, what can you speak to, or what do you suggest?
Well, being in the inquiry is actually a really good place to be. It's almost like you're at nothing. My challenge with people focusing on their passion, maybe the best way to illustrate it is for me to ask you a question.
Sure.
So you have a choice. There are two relationships, and the women are equal. One relationship is going to be really passionate, and the other one is going to be highly committed.
I would definitely say the commitment, because when I think about commitment versus passion, I know from my own experience that the passion isn't always at the same level of intensity.
Right, right.
You know, sometimes you just don't feel like it.
Right.
However, commitment extracts all of that. I said I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it regardless of how I feel.
Right.
Or whether I'm passionate about it today or not.
Right.
So I'm choosing the commitment.
So then I have to wonder, it's so easy for you to make that choice where everyone is being told to go find their passion instead of find something to which they can commit.
I think that people think that when you're passionate about something, you're more likely to be committed to it.
Go to the divorce court and find out how many passionate couples are getting a divorce.
Yeah. Wow.
And then go to the divorce court and tell me how many highly committed couples are in there.
Wow. Interesting. And that's an interesting perspective. So I'm going to say that passion alone is not enough.
And this may be part of what confuses people, because they're looking for what's my passion? What do I feel so good about? You know, it's like, but if you understand being highly committed, and you mentioned something which I call integrity. I said I would do it. I would do it. I said this is an exclusive relationship between you. You know, I tell a woman, this is between you and I. It's exclusive. I honor my word as myself. I said it. It means it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's it. And if she's doing the same, we're in a highly committed relationship. It's like, I don't even have to consider trust.
Yeah. You know, not to digress, I think it's all connected. So Lewis, our producer Lewis, shout out to Visually Focused. Him and I were having a discussion because Lewis is an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And we were reflecting on, is there a time to quit? You know, when you're struggling and going through the battles of entrepreneurship. Now, I have a job and I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm in a different position than he's in. But we think about concepts like 3 feet from gold, right? You quit and you were almost there. And everybody talks about, quitting and whatnot. So you have an extensive background in business and working with different CEOs. We're talking about millions and billions of dollars.
Sure.
And we'll definitely get into some of that some more. But from your experience, is there Or when is the right time to stop or quit and say, you know what, I need to do something else?
So one time that you may consider to quit is if you're just not good at what you're attempting to market. So, you want to market yourself as a graphic designer and your best drawing is a stick man. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I it, and you've never committed to taking art classes or anything like that, but you want to do that and it's not working the way you want. So, there are people, they call it the come to Jesus moment. Like you need to be really honest with yourself. So if you are pursuing a market, and this can be tricky because I was going to say 20 years ago, if you were looking to build a company that made chips for artificial intelligence, it's probably not doing so well. But if you've heard of a company called NVIDIA, it's like Wall Street's darling. It's like one of the hottest stocks trading out there, and the returns are incredible, and everyone wants NVIDIA's chips. Like they're so far advanced because, let's say 10 years ago, they committed to making AI chips when no one else was. And people were like, what are you doing? So if there's no market for what you're doing, and I can't think of something where there's really no market, you're trying to force your way. You want to make buggy whips, right? So 150 years ago, that would have been a great business to make buggy whips. But in 2025, you make buggy whips and they're not doing so well. But you need to look at the market. How big is the market? What's the competitive analysis? Like, are the buggy whips out there so bad and so expensive that we can make something that's better and we're not? So if ours really is better, then how are we marketing ourselves? Like how are we branding ourselves? So are you honestly making the investments, and do you have the capital to do it? If you don't and you can't raise the capital, it may be time to shut down. And maybe you come back to it later, or maybe not. But there's going to be a gap. So sometimes there is a good time to stop and quit. You're about to lose your house because you took out a second mortgage to finance this business, and you need a job. There's a guy, I forgot, he wrote the book, The Millionaire Next Door, Tom Stanley. Tom Stanley. And he talked about why affluent couples have a very low divorce rate, and they're very good at finding someone who's compatible. And they used one as a case study, and the guy said he had a great 6-figure job, tells his wife, I want to be an entrepreneur. And if it fails, you've been staying at home, but if it fails, you're going to have to get a job, and so will I. And she said, I support you. So he goes out and wasn't doing it. So he quit. Honey, go get a job. And so do I. And that's what she did. And then he said, I want to do it again. Try to be an entrepreneur. But you know the deal. You know the routine. If it fails, and it failed again. So somehow he knew when it was time to shut the doors, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not making the traction you want. It's either not a market for it. You don't have the capital needed to produce the kind of quality products you want, or market it, or pay someone to sell it, And he tried it again and he failed. When on the 4th time, this guy knocked the ball out the park, and she never left him. So it's very interesting how, he was able to fail multiple times, and his wife was like, no, I have the right guy. And I'm not worried about whether he fails or succeeds. I have the right guy.
Speaking about having the right guy, so she must have seen some strong potential in him. Why is it that most people, or better yet, let me reframe that question. What does it take for someone to manifest their full potential?
This goes to your first question. What does it take for success? And I said, are you talking regular success? And I answered for that. But if you want breakthrough success, that's almost another paradigm. So where you would start with that is your mindset. So what we're given in our education and in our media there are things that were given to be reality. And those are the tools that you use, and that's the mindset you use to start a business. But if you want to do something extraordinary, you almost have to go like to the mountain top and train and transform the way you see yourself in the world. So your mindset changes. And when you transform mindset, you're literally building a whole new language for this accomplishment. So if I were to have 4 guys, all good at basketball, these 4 men will exist in 4 different paradigms. The first guy is going to say, I hope I make it to the NBA. And he doesn't. The next guy says, I'm training to make it to the NBA. And he does. The third guy says, I'm training to be a starting player in the NBA. And he does. The fourth guy says, I'm going to break every freaking record in the NBA. He's training for that. So the first guy doesn't even make it. He's good. You take him to a park, man, this cat, he's good. But those are 4 different mindsets. So what you're asking is training mindset to be in one of those paradigms. And so it's not always easy to see yourself in the paradigm you're in. Almost like a fish doesn't know it's in water. You don't know what water you are in. And that's why, so people will hire someone like me, an executive coach, to train them to move up to the next level and the next level. Like even a guy like LeBron James, as good as he is, there's a next level for him. And so it's not him going out and practicing basketball. It's transforming his mindset.
What are the fundamentals of a mindset shift that you see? Because again, right, you've dealt with some top players. Number one, what's the difference between the mindset of a CEO versus, I'm going to say, average person, not to belittle or
Sure.
Speak down to anybody like that. We're just speaking to an accomplishment. And on a general basis, someone who wants to be successful, what is the mindset that they need?
They speak different languages. So when I said that this 4 players in basketball,
right?
One is saying that I hope I make it to the NBA.
The other one wants to break records.
Right.
So you're saying that the mindset exists in language.
Absolutely.
Because what I'm hearing is that the language reveals what's there.
Well, and it also shapes your actions. I'm training, hoping I get to the NBA. So, unfortunately, almost everything in our lives shapes everything in our lives. So if you think in terms of intimate relationships, that can shape even our professional lives. So you get into an intimate relationship hoping you don't get hurt. So you're talking about what you don't want. And I talked about the couple who the guys failed at business several times. And they came together looking for someone who's compatible, not looking for hoping I don't get hurt. So I'm committed to finding someone who's compatible with me when it comes to managing money, when it comes to intelligence, health, how do we raise our children, sex, like all these things you're looking for, how do I develop myself mentally, physically, all that stuff. Are we compatible? But if you go in looking for someone, we like the same music, we love to travel, we drink the same, we have things in common, and over time those things change. What people call your core values, like you learn how to manage money from your family. Those are family core values. And it's part of the reason why arranged marriages work so well. because you're marrying the two families, your parents are looking for those core values. So, but that's all of that, those core values, they happen in language. So are we speaking the same language? So if from the core, this often starts, right? How you look at who's compatible with you. Most people are thinking, I want to find a boyfriend, girlfriend, and I don't want to get hurt, or if I want to find someone who's a superstar, I'm looking for someone like my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur, and so I'm looking for someone like that. So you may have an advantage because you've been exposed to a dad who's a superstar. So you've heard and you've seen the language and you see how his actions are correlated with that. So this is why people often, you look at Genghis Khan, his father was a general, so was Hannibal, so was Alexander the Great, so they were exposed to a language of someone who was already successful. A number of CEOs that I work with, their fathers were CEOs. Their grandfather owned, some factory. He owned it.
So what can the person that had, like, for example, me, my mother came here from a third world country, Dominican Republic.
Right.
Worked a factory job. I grew up in the hood. I did what I had to do in the streets.
Right.
My thing transformed my life. So what can someone who may not have the reference or access to language,
like there's examples at home,
indeed,
right.
what can they do to transform their lives? Is it as simple as creating some positive affirmations?
No, I never talk to people about creating positive affirmations. This is going to sound almost like as crazy as saying choose commitment over passion. So positive affirmations are usually designed to hide something negative. So you have to keep making a bigger positive affirmation to hide the thing you don't want. The powerful thing is to actually deal with and uncover your blind spots and mental barriers. So I was saying before, it's kind of hard to see yourself. Having someone who can work with you, an executive coach is going to ask you questions that you've never asked yourself and probably no one else has asked you. Like I asked, would you choose committed or passion, right? That's not a common question that people ask. So there are many things that a person will ask you about you personally, about your business, the things you want to accomplish. Like it's all in this context of the business you want and what's the market and what are your demographics and, what do people want? They're going to ask you, what's making everyone else better? Why are you better than, that's a common question. Like, who do you want to be known as? I'll ask people, your business. Who do you want to be known as, your corporation? You as a CEO, who do you want to be known as? So there are things that you believe and you never question them. And a perfect example is the Earth is the center of the universe and all the planets go around Earth, including the sun. And some guy named Copernicus said, no, that's inaccurate. They go around the sun. The Earth goes around the sun, and so do all the planets. Well, the church executed him for that. So, but the rest of Europe thought that was a fact of life. And there's so many examples, if we look historically, where we just believed it is what it is, and that's the way it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's a way to get locked in, and it really can become a blind spot, and you have no way to get out of it, because you already know what the limits are. And so if you understand that you're looking at the world that way, you're also looking at yourself that way. So you know what the risks are because you already know your limits. And you really don't know your limits. But you have this conversation playing in your head and there's a certain language. So the guy who says, I hope I make it to the NBA, he hoped because he knew his limits. And the other guy who just wanted to make it to the NBA, he also knew his limits. But this guy who said, I'm breaking every record, there are no limits there. I'm breaking records. He's speaking a very different language.
What makes that person like that?
That is a great question, right? So, you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell?
Yes.
Okay, so he wrote a book,
Outliers.
Tipping Point, Outliers, David and Goliath, right? So, um, in Outliers, he talks about 10,000 hours of practice and
Yes.
having mastery. So, this is why I said, find something you're good at, commit to it, and master it. So you'll practice it. And you may be practicing it while you have your business. You know, before we started, we were talking about China. When they first made electric cars, they sucked. They were horrible. So they had to get their 10,000 hours of practice. And what they did is use Tesla to practice on. So we'll make these cars for you. You tell us how to do it. We'll practice it. Okay, we got it. Now we're going to go make our own. And this is better than yours and less expensive. So there is practice. And a lot of times people say practice makes perfect. But a lot of times you're practicing out bad habits. And a bad habit could be a belief system. So it's not the affirmation, it's addressing, I have this thought about myself and my limits, and I just thought that's who I was. And so a good coach can help you reverse engineer that and unlearn it.
It's if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not just having a positive affirmation to mask that. It's asking yourself, why do I even need a positive affirmation for that?
No. Why am I having this limiting belief? See, there's power in confronting things. There's a conversation you and I can have. So we're taught to avoid problems, chaos, breakdowns, disruption. We're taught to avoid that. And so dealing with this thing that derails you is a thing you don't want to deal with. So I'll just put a positive affirmation on top of it. And I'm saying, no, you actually want to confront problems, breakdowns, disruption. In fact, if you're a CEO of a company and you're not intentionally creating problems, you should be fired or retrained immediately. Immediate. You don't belong there. You're just a guy who's there to maintain status quo. But if you want breakthroughs, if you want this quantum leap growth, if you want to disrupt the marketplace, you're going to be like a guy like Steve Jobs, and you're going to say, put 1,000 songs on a device, and I want you to be able to hold it in the palm of your hand. And they're like, but we make these big computers. Why are we making mini listening device? That's Sony. They have a Walkman. He's like, Steve, that already exists. It's a Walkman. Yeah, but how many songs can you put on a cassette? I want 1,000 songs on a device. Well, we don't know. We never did it. We don't know how to do it. Why are we doing this? That's a problem for the organization to solve. And so a lot of people think Steve Jobs had something special, but he had this mindset where he could actually confront problems, disruption, instead of running away from it. He was so powerful with problems that he can give them to you. And on the other end, when you solve the problem, there's an iPod. And then he says, okay, now that we have the iPod, turn it into a phone. A phone? Dude, what are you smoking? But that's a problem for the organization to solve. So most breakthrough initiatives fail because you're giving people problems, and people don't like problems. We're trying to figure out how to get rid of it or blame this guy. And, as long as I can find a scapegoat, the problem goes away.
Yeah, it's amazing that you brought that up, because my next question from doing extensive study, so something that you say is think bigger, act bolder, and turn chaos into breakthroughs. And so can you expound on that more? How does someone turn the chaos in their life into a breakthrough?
Because chaos is not chaos. And so the problems, chaos, disruption, breakdown, these are all things we want to avoid. But now we're still dealing with mindset. So believing the earth is the center of the universe and believing chaos is a problem, to me, is the same thing. So we avoid the chaos. Most people will tell you, I don't want chaos in my life. How many men say, I just want peace? I just find, right. So chaos is not chaos. It's something occurring. Something is happening with how you label it. Once you label it as chaos, there's an automatic belief on how do I deal with chaos. I get rid of it. I avoid it. So now we're talking about breakthrough growth, bold, ambitious, bodacious. It's going to come with problems that you've never seen. So you have no solutions. And as a society, we're almost addicted to problems. Just find a solution. But you don't even understand the problem yet. So chaos is not chaos. It's something occurring. So he who masters chaos masters self. So self-mastery is such a huge part of what I do, because when you master self and now you're confronting chaos, chaos doesn't look like chaos to you that it does to other people. It's something happening. And when you have no mastery over self, chaos just looks like undifferentiated mass, and I have to get away from it. When you have mastery, you can look at it and you start to distinguish, there's an opportunity, that's a bigger problem, this is a gap. You can see things that the average person can't because they're trying to get away from it. So now you have power in self. So you start to become like the guy who says, I'm going to break records. So, I mean, if you watch Michael Jordan play, the average guy in the NBA, if 2 or 3 defenders go on him, he passes the ball. That's chaotic. Michael Jordan says, let me show you what I'm made of. 3 of you? You want to bring one more? And he's going to score. That's a different mindset. So for Jordan, who he was being on the court wasn't someone who wanted to avoid chaos. He trained for that. He had mastery in his craft. So when chaos showed up, he can show you who he is.
Wow. How did you become the person that you are, that is able and qualified to assist people, CEOs in particular, on such a high level? And what's interesting for me is that someone who hasn't achieved millions and billions, I'm like, wow, even those people need coaching.
Well, most Fortune 500 CEOs have an executive coach.
Huh.
It's almost crazy if you don't.
Wow.
Yes.
So it also makes me think about so many of us, in the community. We don't have dads. Many of us don't have positive male examples, because essentially these are supposed to be like our coaches, right? That's supposed to be showing us the way to masculinity and manhood. And I always bring that up because I think it's a plague in our community, and that men need to step up.
Okay.
So how did you become the person that you are today, and tell us about some of your credentials and qualifications?
Sure. I'll tell you in reverse. So I've done CEO roundtables where I invite younger CEOs, and younger means 40s and 50s, maybe early 60s. And they run, these are CEOs of of middle market, mid-tier companies. Their revenues are between 100 million and $1 billion. I invite them to a roundtable, and then I invited former CEOs of Fortune 500s. And these are former CEOs of Chase Bank, Dun & Bradstreet, Harris Hotel and Casinos, New York Stock Exchange. And they talk shop. And people say it's lonely at the top. So if you're a CEO and you're 55 years old and you've gone to, Ivy League, you're really smart, but you're running a company and you're dealing with problems that you never dealt with, how do you tell your board, I don't know how to solve this? So I created an environment where they could say that. And they were saying it to someone who was older and ran bigger companies. So I have an enormous amount of exposure to engaging, advising, CEOs and being a register for a lot of those former CEOs who I gave them the opportunity to do a brain dump. A lot of their knowledge is now in me. So doing that, and I did that because I was already advising CEOs to middle market, but that was sort of my breakthrough. How do I create greater value to my clients and other clients? So I created this. It was called the Board of Veteran CEOs. Before that, I've been a chief operating officer of a number of companies, and I've run companies that were growing so fast they were falling apart, and I grew companies that were failing, and they were failing in a market that was growing like gangbusters, but for some reason they were underperforming. Like you look at 3 years of decline in revenues, like everyone else in your industry is growing like this and you're declining. How is that possible? So to turn that around, and in 9 months, revenues increased by 68%. So I have a good understanding of operations and sales. But what really gave me the mindset would go back to actually my youth. And this becomes important for people to distinguish how they became. And I think you kind of asked me, how did you become you? So how did you become you? I'm thinking two things. So one is, the life showed it to me. So, they say the Japanese sword is the strongest sword because it has 17 folds, which means you have to take the iron, beat it with make it hot, red hot, hit it with a hammer, and then fold it and hit it with a hammer, fold it, hit it, and the more times you do that fold, it becomes stronger. So life I got hammered. So when I was 6 years old, I watched my mother run with broken legs. Is because New Year's Eve, she took us to her mother's house for a New Year's Eve party. It was just my mother and 3 children. And we were in the front seat because she drove her brother home in the back seat. So she's like, I don't know, 5 in the morning maybe. And she falls asleep 100 yards from home. The car is wrapped around a tree. And, myself and my 2 siblings, we're all bleeding. And I look at my mother and she's gone. I'm tall enough to look over the dashboard and I watch her run home. And then my father comes back, with his cousin, and they carry us to the hospital. Well, I learned later that my mother had 2 broken legs, and I watched her run. She didn't limp, didn't crawl, nothing. So at 6, I'm thinking, human beings have something really special, and we don't know how to get to it. So how do you purposely get to that? So I started studying human behavior. At 9, I'm reading everything I can about, the woman who lifts the car off of her child. It's like, how do you get, there's got to be a way to get to that. So, at 11, I'm exercising. I want to be cut. I want to be strong. I'm building this body. But in the mind, and I'm doing mind and body at once, understanding people. And I'm 5'6", 143. I was dunking basketballs. I was starting defensive nose guard in high school because I was training to run with broken legs, and I broke records in every sport that I was in. So that gave me sort of a foundation from a young age, and I didn't know it was giving me a foundation for, my future, but it's so embedded in me that the way I look at the world. So then at 21, I lost both parents. I'm the oldest of 4. 21, my brother's 19, and my sisters were 12 and 16. Now I have to produce some results and care for people the way, normally you don't have to. There's still that, how do you manage the situation like running with broken legs? And so I learned about leadership in the face of chaos, and I learned to delegate. I'm asking my 12 and 16-year-old sisters to do things that you would never ask anyone that age. So I need them to do this, which means I'm going to have to coach them up because I already know they don't know. I had just asked them to do something that I know they don't know how to do, and they failed, just like I knew they would, and they come back, and instead of telling them what to do, I became Socrates, and I asked them questions, and they go fail again, and they come back, and I ask them questions until they started developing a new problem-solving way of thinking of problems and how to resolve them. And then they didn't come back to me. I could ask them to do something they didn't know how to do. They worked it out on their own and then started volunteering for other things. Well, when I started running companies, I was able to transfer all of that. That's why I was able to run companies that was growing so fast they were falling apart, because I already knew how to manage and lead people through chaos. And whatever was happening in the company, I was like, I've seen worse than this, and I got through it. So how do you coach people up? You ask them to do things they don't know how to do, but you're there to support them and give them tools. You don't just throw people out there and leave them on their own to drown. So a lot of those skills stayed with me. And as a quick side, in Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath, he talks about how David was disadvantaged with Goliath and how that disadvantage can turn out to be to your advantage. And he literally talks about how people who lost a parent at around the age of 20 develop leadership skills that you really can't teach in school. And that's exactly what happened with me. So having this idea of running with broken legs and then developing leadership through my parents, and still having that foundation of how do you produce results that, may not make sense to most people. And, when my parents died, I had adults, relatives saying, you're 21, how can you know what to do? You're like, people thought it was odd. But I had that idea of how do you run with broken legs. So it didn't seem odd to me that this was just who I was.
Wow, that's a powerful, powerful story. And for me, what it provides is, number one, to learn to look at the challenges that we've experienced and faced differently, not from a disempowering way, but a way where we can be empowered
right
by them, and also not ashamed, understanding that we can extract something from it
exactly
that can benefit us
and others.
And my condolences to your parents, by the way.
Thank you.
Wow. But hearing that, I cannot ignore that there was something special in you, because an average 6-year-old, I dare say, and I have children.
Right.
I don't know what's in their mind, right? Just like someone may not know what was in your mind at 6 years old.
Right.
But I think it's safe to say that the average 6-year-old is not as analytical as you were. So where did that come from?
So I saw her run. Like, this was undeniable. And I never heard of someone running with one broken leg, but to have two broken legs and a broken arm. That just tells you that human beings, and then you start to hear the woman lifted the car off of her child. Like, you hear about these impossible feats. And so actually witnessing it, there are lots of things that people witness and you hear it altered their life. So I was young enough to have my life completely altered because there was no explanation for how and I'd seen my mother run by 6 years old. I had seen her run, and she ran just like always. I just saw my mother run home.
Wow.
And I thought that was just normal. But broken legs, maybe it's analytical. I don't know. I think that when you see something that's so incredible and you can't explain it, I just wanted to understand it.
You have an interesting take on the victim mentality. You say that it was forced on us. Talk about that.
You want some controversy in this?
I want you to be real.
You gathered that I was saying mindset can be conveyed through language. Victim mentality is also conveyed through language. That's a mindset. So Man, people will struggle with what I'm going to say. So when someone says your ego made you do it, that's victim mentality. I can't do anything about it, man, because my ego, that little man up in my head, he's making me do and making me say these things. So now I don't have to be responsible for anything. I'm just a victim of the ego. See, there are lots of things that we say that we don't realize it strips us of our power and freedom. So instead of me saying it's an ego making me do it, I learn to, I get trained to hear the conversations that I have with myself, what I'm thinking about, the thoughts I have, so that I can be responsible for them. So and sometimes I like to make it kind of simple. So if a woman believes all men cheat, it's like, well, is that belief system going to get me the great loving and affectionate relationship that I want? And probably not, because if I believe you're going to cheat, I'm going to treat you like a cheater and you've done nothing. But I already believe that, so I'm going to withhold things from you. I'm going to treat you poorly because I'm treating you like you're a cheater already, because I know it's not if, it's just when you're going to do it. So that makes her a victim. And she might be 12 and never had a relationship, but she's already made herself a victim. If a guy believes all women are gold diggers, it's the same thing. I have to protect my pockets because this woman's going to, steal my money. She's going to steal my gold. That's victim mentality.
So who forced it on us?
Well, who told you have an ego? Because if you can tell me where the ego is, because I've spoken to doctors and brain surgeons and no one can tell me where it is. Do you know where it is?
They say it's sort of a part of the psychological makeup.
But is it in the brain? Where is it?
It's
because if I can go and cut it out and just take it out, then we're going to be better off, right? So where is it?
Well, then we would have to say, where's the subconscious?
Ooh, another victim word.
What do you mean?
Oh, man, it just must have been my subconscious mind. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I said that. I'm not responsible for anything. It's my subconscious. Oh, my subconscious got me again.
Yeah.
See, in language. You don't have to be responsible for anything. The subconscious mind did it.
So how does someone remedy the victimhood or the victim mentality that they may have?
Stop looking for solutions.
Stop looking for solutions.
Absolutely.
Wait,
hold up. You're a victim too. Because if you can't find a solution, you're a victim.
Right. Because I can't find no way to fix this.
Exactly. I'm not responsible. The solution wasn't there. Oh, well, it is what it is. That's victim too. It is what it is. Nothing I can do about it.
So what is there to do? Confront, as you mentioned earlier?
You can confront that. Sure. Yeah, you can confront it. But see, the way we're taught in school, we get rewarded for, I have the right answer.
Right.
So that's the way we're trained to give the right answer, or you have to, if you just give me the right answer, I'll know what to do. You're at work, just tell me what to do. And that becomes a problem, because if you're at work and problems happen and you always have to run to the boss to ask what to do, the boss doesn't really get to do his job, especially. So I ran a transportation company, and that was the problem. The president of the company was solving all the problems. So there was no one at the helm of the ship running the company and growing it. So the first thing I did is told him to get out of operations. And he said, okay. And he told everyone, you can't come to me anymore. You have to go to Ted. And that's what happened. And when they came to me with a problem, I asked them, what would you do if I wasn't here? Why go to Mike? Well, you can't go to him anymore. So now what?
So, but I think I get you, right? But I think we, even if we say, well, confront the chaos or confront the problem, I'm confronting it with a purpose to find a solution.
So when people came to me with a problem and I asked, what would you do if I wasn't here? I asked a question. I didn't give them a solution. And then they said what they would do if I wasn't here. And then I asked them a question. And they said, I didn't think about that. Okay, got it. Bye. And so I told you when my parents died and I asked my sister to do things, I didn't give them solutions. I gave them problems. They had to work it out. So they had to work out how they looked at something they don't know how to do. So they came to me, same way people came to me at work and said, I have a problem. You need to fix it. That's not my job. I don't get paid to solve problems. I get paid to create problems.
It's an interesting paradigm you're coming from, because I've read over 400 books. Majority of them are about personal development, achievement, and success,
Sure.
as well as culture. And a common theme that I'll say that most people say is, if you want to be successful, learn how to solve a problem.
Okay.
And then solve that problem. So you're saying create problems.
So John F. Kennedy said, before the end of the decade, we'll send a man to the moon. That was such a huge problem. The whole nation had to help.
So much so that some people say that it was fake. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
What they did was they worked on something to do that, right? They did. They created technology, and that other things came out of that, right? And it could be fake. I don't know. I wasn't there. But that was a problem for people to solve.
And from a problem or from chaos, what I'm gathering too is that it gives birth to things, creativity, hence tapping into something inside of you that would only come out if you had this problem. Hence the super strength. Oh, snap, I'm lifting up a car to save my child when I couldn't lift 50-pound dumbbells before. But my child, there's a problem. My child is under that car, so now I have to lift up this car.
Life gave you a problem.
Hence, tapping into my potential. Going back to that question, how do we maximize or manifest our potential? Well, we need a problem then to spark or stimulate that in us.
Right. So Steve Jobs created a problem for his people to solve. And he probably couldn't design it himself, but he said, he gave you a context. I want something like this, this, and this, and solve it, man. Yeah, I'm paying you to solve it. And they did. So, whether it's starting a business, moving up the corporate ladder, or are you just looking for simple things to solve? Like a lot of people say, I won't commit to it unless I know I can do it. And you didn't create a problem for yourself.
That's deep.
I won't promise unless I know I can keep it.
I'm laughing because, yeah, you're right. I'm reflecting on my own life. I would say I aim for things that I think I can accomplish, for sure. Things were tough. You know, like when I went to accomplish my associate's degree.
Right.
I tell people all the time, that's one of the tough. I mentioned it in my book.
Sure.
Going to college was one of the toughest. I barely made it out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, according to society, I was supposed to be a statistic.
Right.
But I had the desire. I need to transform my life, because the problem I had was a child at 19 years old, and I saw that I was either going to be dead or in jail. So I needed to do something. So I didn't pursue what I really wanted to do, was to become a psychologist.
Okay.
So I went for the low-ending fruit, which is get my associate's degree, because I felt like it was something fast that I could do. I had a child, so it was manageable. I definitely aimed for something that was manageable, although it was tough and hard. I was in tutoring every day, falling asleep at the kitchen table, all that.
Did you know how to transform your life?
I think I was learning Uh, you
Where
know,
where did you learn? Did you go to school and they gave you a course on transforming your life?
no, I joined the nation. I joined the Nation of Gods and Earths and became a Fapa Center,
Okay.
which introduced me to some concepts of knowledge of self.
Okay.
And like one of the things that they teach you is that you're a supreme being. And I'm like, whoa.
Hmm.
And so that opened me up to strive to be that.
Okay. All right. But technically, it sounds like you didn't have the tools. And I'm saying that because, for example, there are lots of diets out here. So all the knowledge in the world for diets. And what do most people do when they go on a diet? So knowledge doesn't do it.
Right.
People think if you give me the knowledge, it's back to that. Just give me a solution. Give me the answer. You ever watch in spring where little birds hatch out of the eggs and the parents come flying back to the nest with food? What
Yeah.
do the baby birds do?
They go up. They
Open their mouth.
Open
right?
their mouth. Yeah.
That's the way we're trained to think. Give me the answer. Just give me the solution. There's no real thinking on our own. I didn't say critical thinking. There's no thinking. I just give me the answer and I'll do it. So there's not, see, we started this conversation with, you said the inquiry. And I said the inquiry is really important. Sometimes it can be more important than the answer. Because if you're trying to solve a problem and you just run and get the solution, this is why we see cycles and patterns repeat over and over where the problem doesn't go away because you solved a solution. I mean, a symptom of the problem. So you didn't really think through it. And so that's why chasing solutions can create more problems than creating problems. You follow me on that?
I can understand. Expound on it some more.
So,
well, I'll give you my interpretation of it. The reason why is because you're not really doing the groundwork, what it takes to transform that situation. You're looking for a Band-Aid effect.
I want to make it go away.
Right, or a quick fix.
Right, but it goes away. If I quick fix it, I want to make it go away.
Right.
But do I really want to deal with the source? What's the source of the problem? You have a leak in a roof and you complain that the floor or the rug is getting damaged and we need a bigger bucket to catch the water. Well, that's really not the problem. Or you complain about the rain. Every time it rains, water comes through my roof. It just has to stop raining. I just need a solution for the rain or bigger buckets to catch the water. The source of the problem is your roof. It has a hole in it.
Yeah. What would you say is a common trait that the average CEO has?
I technically don't look at traits and characteristics and personalities. I don't look at those.
What do you look at?
I listen for language in conversations.
So is there a common language that CEOs speak?
Yes, they're speaking a language of accomplishment, achievement, empowerment. So they are really great CEOs. They understand that they won't be there forever. So part of their greatness is being able to instill that in other people or pull out of other people their greatness so that they can eventually replace themselves. So if I leave, the company continues to grow and thrive. Or if I'm not here in the office or I'm in another state, do they have to call me to solve a problem? Or are my people great enough? I hired people smarter than myself, but what I have is I know how to bring these different kinds of people. When you look at someone like John D. Rockefeller Sr., Howard Hughes, Andrew Carnegie, they were not experts in whatever Rockefeller wasn't an expert in oil. Hughes wasn't an expert in, he learned stuff, aircraft and movies, film. Andrew Carnegie was not an expert in steel, mining it, making it.
You know, another example, even like Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, right? One of the most famous personal
Right,
development books.
right,
He tells you in his book that he wasn't an expert on this.
right. He interviewed people.
Right.
But so what Rockefeller did is he had leadership. He knew how to bring the smartest, the best, the most ambitious people together and get them to work as a team. That was his power. You know, people talk about what's your superpower. His superpower wasn't knowing how to, you know, the exact method for drilling oil, but he also asked questions. So he used to first sell kerosene, right? And then when electricity came, people didn't want kerosene; they wanted electricity. I'm going to go out of business. So then he looks at Ford. Oh, maybe we can make something that. So he asked the question to a scientist: can we make something that can power the automobile? Because that's the future. People are going to be driving cars. This guy, Henry Ford, is going to make it so affordable that most people can drive. And can we do it? And they found that this stuff that they were just dumping into the river was gasoline. So now they're selling it. So he asked the question, the inquiry.
How, you know, a lot of people, they say they lack motivation. And I know you would say that's a victim word, or that's a victim mentality, or they don't have the discipline. So how can someone stay focused and motivated for a long-term goal?
So when I'm talking about where you get mental barriers and roadblocks, those can all be distractions, like the noise that you hear. A lot of the noise that's in your head, it's almost like a radio station playing in your head. And just think of the conversation people have, like Mondays suck, or thank God it's Friday. Like, how is Friday better than Monday? They're just arbitrary names that we put on a 24-hour period.
Well, someone would say Friday's better because now I have the weekend to look forward to that I don't have to work.
But it's just a day of the week. What about people who work Saturday and Sunday and they're off on Monday and Tuesday? Just what happens? I get paid on Friday. I can go party as happy hour. So what I'm saying is that these are things that can derail us. So if you have this Mondays suck, Fridays are better, you may be just living for the weekend, right? And that conversation by itself can derail you. So it's the language, right? A lot of the judgments that we have of other people, right? So maybe there are people who can support you, but you don't get to support because you're too busy judging everyone. So these are things that can take you off. So being able to distinguish the noise that's going in your head. So Mondays suck, Fridays, it's like a radio station that plays in your head and you can't turn it off. You wake up in the morning, tomorrow, people are going to wake up and say it's Monday. What makes Monday bad? Like a paycheck is what makes your day better. So you only have one good day a week. You get 52 Saturdays, 52 Sundays. So out of 365 days, and Sunday is not the best because the next day is Monday. So you get 52 good days a week.
Let me ask you this, right? So I'm into fitness. You're into fitness. You look amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Something that a lot of people say, "Oh, true, it's hard, man." Right? They say it's hard. And so how would you assist someone that's using some working out consistently and the act of working out, if you're working out properly and you're challenging yourself, it is tough, right? So how can someone reframe that? This is hard. This is tough. And therefore, that's why I'm not doing it or not consistent with it.
Right. So it's like saying Monday is tough. It's the same thing, right? This is noise. And you inherit it. These are not even, if you listen, it's not even your voice. You heard this somewhere. So you have someone's voice playing in your head about what's easy, what's tough, what I can do, what I can't do. And you've embraced it. as though it's real. And this is the point I'm making. In reality, Monday is not worse than Friday. You just said it is.
Well, someone will argue that no, I worked out and it was tough. It was very hard. I was sore, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
So they would say there's an experience to match the language.
Or is your language giving you the experience? Like, is it a preconceived notion? So you may not know what you're doing, right? So you may be lifting more than what you are trained to do at this moment, right? So, or you may be lifting it wrong, right? There are lots of things. I've been training since I was 11. I mean, push-ups, sit-ups, I didn't touch weights until 16. So yes, there are days that you're sore. So when I talked about knowledge doesn't tell you how to lose weight, maybe one of the biggest things is the conversation you have about your body in the mirror. So the person looking in the mirror loses 50 pounds and looks at themselves, and they may be secretly saying, they won't tell anyone, I look sick. That doesn't look right. So they gain weight back. They gain 60 pounds after losing 50. So when you're working out, when you look in that mirror, is that the body that you're committed to having? Or is there another kind of body? So it doesn't matter if it's lifting weights, going on a diet. What's the body that you want to have? Now, what can make it difficult is I want to have these biceps. I want to have this cut, and then there's the secondary conversation that says, but that's not going to happen. And then it says, because you don't have the genetics and you don't have the time and you don't have the money and you don't have the diet and you just diminished. And so you keep the same body.
And what I'm hearing from this whole conversation is people are bringing those type of conversations into their business and personal life.
It's who you are. It's who you become.
And so would you agree that, I was taught how you do one thing is how you do everything?
Sure.
Because of the mindset.
Yes, I get what you're saying. You just said a word that perhaps is what gets in the way of people learning. So we are taught to agree and disagree with people. And as a result, we don't listen to people. We're listening for what we agree with, what we disagree with, what we like, what we don't like. So we really are not listening. And this becomes the other challenge, that people don't listen. They hear their interpretation of what you're saying based on what they have already seen in the past. So what we're trained to do is take our past and put it in the future and can't understand why nothing changes. So with the person training in the past, they probably inherited a conversation that's saying lifting weights is hard. You're going to be sore. It's not worth it. You're not going to feel good. Blah, 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 blah. So they go and look in the mirror and say, well, I want this kind of body, but lifting weights is hard. All this stuff from the past, they just put right in the future, and it just blinds them. It's not going to change my life. Who's going to care? Or I did it once. I remember a woman told me, I lost weight, and she had the body to be hot. And she said, I dropped the weight and I got down to this size, and I was with a guy and he didn't really acknowledge or care, so I just put weight back on. But so we justify things. So, and it's no different that justifying Friday is better than Monday because I justify it because I get a paycheck and I'm off the next 2 days. This is a justification. But you never made that up. You just it's just playing like a radio station in your head, and you can't turn it off. It keeps saying, but you get paid and you're going to be off tomorrow, man. So Friday's better.
Hence why you said one of the things that you do is you're really aware of the conversations that you're having.
So this is the kind of work I do. I never train people to be aware. So if you and I are walking down a beach and we come to a wooden fence and it says for the next 100 yards, this is a minefield. And you and I have to get to the other side. We have to get there. What are you going to do?
We gotta walk. I'm going to say I have to be aware of where I'm stepping, because.
And when you step on a mine, what are you going to do?
Oh, I'm getting blown up.
Okay. So you're going to risk being blown up.
If that's the only way.
So you're now aware there's a minefield. And I don't even know what the odds are. I don't know if you have a 10% chance or a 90% chance. I don't know how many mines are there. And we're both aware. And how does that increase our chances of crossing that minefield? That we're aware of it.
That's a good question. Well, number one, I would say it lets me know what I'm up against. So that awareness tells, because you said this is the only way to the next.
We have to get to the other side.
We have to get to the other side. Okay. It's either I stay here or I get to the other side. So I'm aware that this is a minefield. I now have to I would say the same thing again. Be careful. I'm aware of. I'm looking.
Boom.
Yeah.
Hey man, you go first. You're aware. You go first. I'm. Boom. Well, I know where not to step, but he only made it 1/4 through, so. Boom. Now what?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So we get to this fence. It's a minefield.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man, I'm trained. I have over 1,000 hours of training. And my training gave me distinctions. And there's an odd shape in the land, even though it's buried, there's an odd shape in the land, and I can distinguish where the mine is. Not only can I distinguish where it is, I'm trained to carefully dig it up and dismantle it. I can reverse engineer the boom. You crossing with me?
Yep. Let's get it.
Right. So I'm trained to do that. This is what I do with my clients. I don't say be aware that something can derail you. We're going to train you to distinguish. You're going to have distinctions in your own language and in your own behavior and how you engage the world, how you see yourself in the mirror. And you're going to have distinctions for the language, for the things that derail you. We're going to reverse engineer it. We're going to confront it, because that's what I'm going to do, confront those minds. I'm not going to just say, hey, man, would you step over this? I'm going to dismantle that sucker so that we can just walk across. So that's the kind of work. It's not about being aware, because we call people having triggers, right? So something occurs, it looks chaotic, and there's a trigger, and there's this thing I want to avoid, and it's the minefield. What do? It's chaos. I want to take on this business. I want to take on this new, initiative, this breakthrough. Even maybe hire someone that I never hired. This guy is so smart. I never hired anyone like this. And it can create all kinds of conversations like, boom, the mind just went off. So maybe it's a bad idea. Or I start the initiative or hire the person and I squander them. I quit. So a lot of times quitting, you asked earlier, a lot of times quitting is quitting before there's even a problem, because you created the problem. It's kind of what you call self-sabotage. So when you can distinguish those minds in your own mind and you can reverse engineer them, you now can move forward. Because in life, that's what life is like, that minefield. There are things that happen that trigger you, and you're aware. People say, well, I'm aware, something happened in my childhood. I'm aware of this, but I'm only human. And that's the probably the biggest way to escape anything, any responsibility. Say, well, I'm only human.
Word.
I'm only human. What do you want from me? And you can go into the workplace. Hey, I need you to have that done today by 4. I'm only human. How can I do that? They made themselves a victim, and they've derailed everything because I'm only human.
Powerful, powerful. As I like to land the plane, as I like to
Okay.
say, rather as I like to say, what would you say is the percentage of people, or is there a percentage that are struggling with limited beliefs?
Most. All right. Not only are most people struggling with limited beliefs, and it's because in our education system, like I said, we get rewarded for having the answer. We're not trained to master self. And limiting beliefs, you could say it's a one sign of a lack of self-mastery.
Yeah. How can someone train themselves to master self?
Without doing a plug, where you hire someone like me. All right, martial arts could be a great way for self-mastery. I've never done yoga, but I know with martial arts, one of the things is you want the person to develop self-mastery because as they become better at fighting, you don't want them going out in the world and just beating on people. So self-mastery is sort of combined with that.
Yeah, I can tell you as someone who has been meditating regularly for over a decade at this point, close to 15 years, that meditation helped me. I'm going to speak for myself because it does two things. I'm aware, and there's that word again. You gave me like a insecurity about using that word now. I'm joking. I am aware of thoughts.
Right.
And so I still get triggered and I still react opposed to responding at times. But I'm very aware, like, there was that narrative. And that came from training and meditating.
Right.
And also, I tell people, you'll be surprised how much just breathing through something properly. Sure. I do cold plunges, and I tell everybody, it's all in the breath.
Right.
Once you breathe a certain way, I'm not going to say you don't feel the cold, but the cold is just there.
Right.
But what happens is when that cold hits you, a lot of people, right, they start doing that, hyperventilating. If you just breathe calm, it's just like the cold is just there.
That's great training for dealing with chaos, because that's a chaotic situation. Your body is going physically through, biological chaos.
Yes. So. I'm pretty sure it could be complicated, especially because you have such a diverse portfolio in terms of working with different people, CEOs, people in personal lives. But is there a time that you would say it takes an average person, so to speak, to have like breakthrough success?
I wouldn't put depending on where a person is, are they already a high performer? Are they a low performer? So I once had a client, and this is a good story because people say old dogs don't learn new tricks. And this guy was about 62, 63. He had his training was he was a CPA, and at one time he worked for one of the largest CPA firms in the country. And he decided to change professions. He went into the mortgage business, and I guess he started out okay, and then he hit a slump. And every day he went to work waiting for them to fire him. That's how bad his slump was. He just knew they were going to get rid of him. So one of his colleagues introduced me to him. He hired me. And so we worked together for 6 months. And in the first 3 months, he doubled his productivity. And then in the next 3 months, he doubled that. So let's say he was only doing 2. Well, in the first 3 months, he was doing 4. And in the next 3 months, he was doing 8. So now, and before he even got to the 6 months, he went to work no longer worrying about being fired. They were like, hey, come to the office. I want to talk to you. What do you need? We'll give you whatever you need. What kind of support? Are we giving you all the support you need? And 4 of his competitors were, hey, man, come work for us. So he ended up going to another company. He thought it was a better deal, but he went from worrying about being fired every day to doubling productivity, doubling that again, and getting better offers everywhere, including his current employer saying, "Hey, man, we'll give you whatever you need."
Wow, 6 months.
6 months, right?
Wow. So it can be that quick.
Well, that right, and I worked with a guy, really smart, like Ivy League-ish education, early 50s, also an athlete, and just probably a high IQ guy, definitely above average, and I could see this guy. What he was telegraphing was, I want to be the CEO. So I trained him to be the CEO. And I think it took less than a year before he had a couple of interviews and he was hired to be the successor to the founder of the company. So that was less than a year.
So,
And before meeting me, that was not going to happen.
Well,
It just wasn't.
what did you shift that has you say that?
So in that guy's case, he was so smart that it was shooting him in the foot. So he didn't have leadership, or his understanding of leadership was to show everyone how smart he was. I'm the smartest guy in the room. That's not leadership. I mean, great leaders, going back to Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath, he talks about how dyslexic people can become great leaders. Because when they're in school, they figure out they can't keep up with the class. So they make best friends with the smartest guy in math and the smartest guy in science and the smartest guy in English. And so they then delegate homework, or they have them explain things to them. And so they're doing all the leadership things, and they're leading people who are already smarter than them. So they already know they can't keep up. Richard Branson is one example. And there are a few other guys that he interviewed, and he saw that pattern. So now that they already know from a little boy, how to work with people smarter than them and not feel, bothered or less than, these are great leadership qualities. They know how to delegate. They know how to, have people explain things to them. And, yeah.
And so many of us struggle with just asking for help. That alone may get in the way.
Yeah. But, leading people, this goes back to what I was saying about Rockefeller and Carnegie, those guys, Henry Ford, knowing how to lead and pull the most out of it. So when my parents died, when I talk about coaching my sisters up, literally what I'm doing is pulling something out of them that they didn't know how to do on their own, which is ultimately my job, is getting people to unlearn what derails you, and then the other part of it is to pull out of you what you don't know how to get to become the person you didn't know how to be.
I have two questions. What is the most important quality of a leader?
Stop looking for qualities. That's the most important. See, because once you get stuck with looking for qualities, what it does is sets up a trap for you. Because just imagine, right, whether it's a leader or being in a relationship, you say, these are the list of things that I have to do to be good, and I'm doing them. And yet you're not a good leader, because you're just like a coloring book connecting the dots. You're not being authentically yourself. Right? There's no commitment to your people and pulling out the best and listening to your people. Sometimes they have ideas. So you said something earlier, I don't remember, but what percentage of people get derailed, like, who have mental barriers? People are not trained to unlearn that, but people are also not trained to listen. We think, you have one mouth and two ears, and like that's supposed to change. But we're not trained to listen. We're listening to Mondays suck. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to deal with problems. That's what we're listening. So when someone's speaking, that's what you're listening to. You're not listening to me. You're listening to you're listening to what you think of my jacket, or my hair, or my shoe, or what you want to have for lunch. Like when I'm training people, I actually have them do exercises so that they can now not be aware, they can have distinctions for what's occurring when someone's talking to them and how they don't listen. So these are when you're a leader, listening to your people, listening to your customers, listening to the marketplace. You could say Steve Jobs had some mastery. Now, maybe most people do know Steve Jobs has the kind of training that I'm talking about.
It's interesting too because according to his book, phenomenal book, by the way, we'll leave a link in the description. They also said that he didn't have the best attitude, or he was a jerk or whatever the case is.
Right. So you're asking about qualities.
Yeah. So if he was concerned about qualities, then he probably wouldn't be leading as himself.
Right.
Which then he wouldn't be as effective.
Right. I'm trying to I have to do the qualities that's on the list.
Yeah, he didn't. Based on what I read in the book, he didn't care about none of that.
No, but people loved working for him because he'd have you doing things that you didn't know you could do.
Yeah,
these are people who stand for something, and if you can look at like the founding fathers of the United States, they were standing for liberty. See, like you're standing for something bigger than yourself. It becomes like a platform and you invite people to support you on that platform. But if you're just standing for accomplishing the things that you know you can do, like the founding fathers, how did they know that they could separate from England? There was no proof for that. How were they going to finance this new country? Where is the money coming from? Who is going to be the leader? Like, what are the structures? Like, when you're standing for something, Steve Jobs, how are we going to put 1,000 songs on this device? I don't know. And I'm not saying be a pipe dream. So I have no training in aeronautics engineering. I have never flown. Well, I haven't. With a business partner, I flew a plane, but he knew how to fly the plane. He just let me play around with it. But if I told you I was going to fly to the moon next month, I'd be talking a pipe dream. So I don't have a past that can be responsible for flying to the moon. So I'd just be talking. So you need to be able to distinguish between something you're committed to and you have some responsibility for that kind of commitment and a pipe dream. So it's not about just airy-fairy saying anything. And really standing, like, if you listen to great leaders in business or politics, you'll listen to them use language like stand and commitment. In the future, what we committed to in the future, what we declare. You'll hear words like declared independence from Great Britain. We declared it in language. And then once we declared independence, that shaped our actions. Standing for liberty, how do we write this Constitution? It's got to support that stand for freedom and liberty. So what does your business stand for? What do you stand for? These are questions.
Powerful. For the average person who's listening, you mentioned some of the credentials of some of the men that you've worked with and gave examples. But for the average person, that just goes to work, maybe struggling to pay their bills, maybe struggling with low credit scores, all of these things, what can they do now?
So if you're dealing with struggling financially and you're struggling with credit scores, what I said to you early on about starting a business, educate yourself about finance. And there also, there's a commitment to how you manage your money. Like, people often spend money on things that don't really provide value to them. Are you buying these things to look good to someone else? Am I buying it to get a date? That's kind of a consumer mindset, right? So this is a mindset. So capital is for investing. And sometimes the greatest investment you can ever make is in yourself. So if managing your finances, so how do I manage that? Well, I didn't learn that from home. So do I know someone, or do I know someone? Maybe they talk to you, or maybe you do it, you help them yourself, or you know someone. Maybe that's part of your network, your ecosystem of people, and learning how to better manage that. But you also, there also needs to be a mindset transformation, because you hear about the person who wins the big lottery ticket and they end up broke. So the money is not really the solution. Are you living above your means? Are you living to impress the world? What are the things that you're committed to? You said sometimes people don't even know, I want to start a business, but I don't know what I want to do. So, expose yourself to things. Traveling can be great. I've lived in several countries, and you may not have the money to do that, but the U.S. is a big place, and there's lots of variety here. Just seeing how people do things in other places. Spend time. An investment could be taking someone to lunch that you don't necessarily like, and you don't even know why you don't like them, or they think very differently than you. That could be a great investment, and spend time getting to know and understand and ask some questions that could really change your own life. So those are easy things that you can do.
Love that. Love that. What would you say is the most important book that you've read, and why?
Well, I'll say Blue Ocean Strategy. I forget who the author is.
Oh, I've never read that one. I have to look into it.
Blue Ocean Strategy, it talks about how you'll have an industry where everyone's making the product. And so because everyone's making it, how do you differentiate yourself? You cut your price. And you cut your price so low that you're cutting into your bone. And everyone has cut their prices so low that they're bleeding now. And so the ocean becomes red because it's saturated. So go find the blue ocean. Go make the iPod. Make something. There was no one in the iPod space. That was a blue ocean. So it was a really good book, and it uses some really great examples. It even talks about how Henry Ford's first company was Cadillac. He walked away from Cadillac because the investors wanted him to sell luxury cars, and he wanted to sell a car that the average person could buy.
Wow. 100 years from now, they're reading your eulogy.
No, they won't.
What are they doing?
They're talking to me.
Great. What are they saying about your legacy?
They're saying that chaos is not chaos, and we're ready to take on the world and life. They're looking for my training, my guidance. They're looking for what they would call wisdom. They'd be looking for guidance that helps them move in a direction that society hasn't moved. So they would come to the realization that with all the technology that we've had over the past 2,000 years, and how that transformed how we do things, that it never transformed the human being. And we're now ready for that.
If you can summarize your philosophy in a few words, what would that be?
Powerful people don't solve problems, they create problems.
Tell people how to find you, how they can hire you for your services, about your book, which will have you come back and interview you solely on that. Tell them everything.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn at Ted Santos. I have a Facebook page. I'm on YouTube. Those are social media, easy ways to find me. How to find me. What was the other one?
How they can hire you for your services.
Oh, yeah, find me on that. You can, my email is T like Ted Santos at turnaroundip.com. Shoot me an email. You can ask me a question. Tell me what your breakthrough is, and how you've managed breakthrough. And if you'd like to hire me, we can have a conversation. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions to better understand. And one of the first questions I would ask is, what would be a breakthrough for you?
Yeah, and don't forget to tell them how to find your book.
Sure. It's in Amazon. You can actually even find it in Barnes and Noble. It's on Barnes and Noble site, Amazon. And the book, the title is Here's Why You Can't Find Love. And if I won't go into it, but I wrote the book because relationships in this country are failing and it's affecting business. So the book is definitely related.
Yeah, and we'll have a link in our description.
The book takes you on a journey of transformation. So what this conversation has been about transformation. And so the book, I wrote it, I took a major parts of my methodology in training executives, and I infused it into the book, but I put it in a subject that most people can relate to, which is which is relationships. But the reader definitely goes on a journey of transformation.
Sounds excited. Can't wait to read it. If you know anyone that could benefit from this conversation, a businessman or woman, someone starting their career, or just the amazing gems that he shared in reference to our personal lives and what we can do to transform and have breakthroughs and face the chaos, share this episode with them. Thank you, brother.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for inviting me, man. This has been fun. I enjoyed this very much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.